Welcome back. It's Ed Martin, and this is an issue that folks don't understand the law enough, and it helps to get somebody who really understands the law on immigration on the program to talk to us. Our next guest is at the Immigration Reform Law Institute. It's IRLI.org, IRLI.org, and his name is Chris Hajec, Director of Litigation, and he wrote a column that is called "Trump Doesn't Need Congress to Achieve His Immigration Goals." So welcome to the program, Chris. How are you?
Fine. Happy to be here.
Oh, thank you for coming on. So, Chris, I tell people all the time that I often think of the immigration question, what Trump did with, say, America First. He put the idea of putting yourself first, your family first, your nation first, before you save the world, before you fund wars, all those kinds of things, seems pretty obvious. But on the question of immigration, before we get to your point that he can do a lot with his own, the laws that exist as president, when these folks come in this caravan towards America, explain what happens when they touch down. If they get onto our side of the border and use some of the magic phrases, asylum and the reasons, they really kind of bind the hands of a lot of the people who receive them, right? Isn't that one of the problems and the reason the president is saying stop short of the border?
Yes. When they come, they can claim asylum, and the officer who's otherwise would do what's called expedited removal and return them to Mexico very quickly has to determine whether they have a credible fear of persecution. And it's a very low standard. And if they have a credible fear, basically they, under current law, they get to stay in the country somewhere, and they're just supposed to report for an asylum hearing in months or years from now. And it's just a free pass into the country. Most of them don't show up for their asylum hearings. Not many eventually are granted asylum. So it's a major abuse that Trump laid out in his recent proclamation, and the Attorney General talked about it in his rule. And Trump, to stop that, this is somebody who comes across the border and is caught.
Right.
The Attorney General limited asylum for those people. They weren't eligible for asylum, and he has authority to do that under the law. And so those people were just getting returned. And then they tried to go through ports of entry, and that was really slowed down by Trump. And so they end up in these big camps in Mexico. But a judge recently in Northern California said Trump acted against the Attorney General's limit of asylum eligibility was unlawful, and that in a very outrageous decision enjoined it. And Trump, I guess, is not doing that at the moment until that gets.
Yeah. We're talking with Chris Hajec, who is the Director of Litigation at the Immigration, I want to get it right, Immigration Reform Law Institute, IRLI.org. Chris, what else could the president do? Let's say that the Democrats get into office, and, I mean, they will in another month, and they say they've settled their feuds over Pelosi or whomever, and they decide to not allow any, immigration reform that has any teeth. What is it the president, you're the point of your article, what is it that he can do without Congress? Walk us through some of the things he can do.
Well, he can restrict the entry of any class of aliens he thinks is harmful to the national interest. He can restrict the entry of all aliens if he thinks doing so is in the national interest. So, for example, just to take a very crude example, he could say that no alien can enter the country unless they have a PhD, because we want to protect the jobs and wages of the most vulnerable Americans, and no one who doesn't have a PhD can come in until such time as every American who wants a job has a job, and every American with a job makes $40,000 a year for full-time work. makes at least that.
If he does that, so let's say the president comes in one day and he says, okay, you know what, we're gonna only allow, because I'm gonna do it on merit. We could use people that are trauma surgeons, but we don't need any more electrical engineers. We could use some people who will work on a farm, but we don't need anybody who will work in hotels. I'm going to restrict all those categories. Who sues, and when they do, can they say something like, Congress is the one that gets to decide that, or is that really not something Congress is supposed to decide? You see what I'm saying?
Well, as for who sues, I think employers probably would try to sue. They might be able to. Aliens abroad who want to enter wouldn't have any standing to sue as a general matter. But whether this is supposed to be Congress's decision or the president is very clear. That Congress has given the decision to the president, who also has inherent authority as commander-in-chief to block entry of aliens in the national interest. I mean, that's part of his inherent constitutional authority in foreign affairs. And Congress made it very clear that it's not contesting that authority, but affirming it when it gave the president this broad power to restrict entry.
Now, let me ask you, again, we're talking with Chris Hajec, and Chris Hajec is the Director of Litigation for the Immigration Reform Law Institute, IRLI.org. Go there. There's lots of good stuff there, lots of interesting initiatives going on, lawsuits that are going on. Chris, when you saw Attorney General Jeff Sessions, I got into this with one of my co-hosts, and we did a Election Day show, and she was, we need to replace Sessions. On a lot of immigration issues, within the law that the executive branch had, the president has, Sessions was cracking down, right? He was taking what I would say, a more conservative, more pro-America first view on immigration law, right?
Oh, yes. From our point of view, he was superb. There were a lot of long faces around here when he resigned. And what we hope is that his replacement, whether that's Whitaker for now or whoever it is eventually, will be as good as Sessions was on immigration. And he was very good.
Yeah. All right, Chris. Well, thank you. We'll keep an eye on this and keep us in the loop. Chris Hajec, and he's at the Immigration Reform Law Institute, IRLI.org. Go there and check it out. Really good group. Important stuff. And the good thing about IRLI, and I read them. I read the stuff they write. I read some of the briefs and some of the filings they undertake. But they're looking at it from their issues. And if you're a Republican and you're weak and soft on these issues, they're just as likely to take you to task. I mean, they really are sort of nonpartisan, bipartisan in the sense that they're looking for people who will get the issue. And going forward, there's only going to be two ways this goes. There's going to be more people on the Democrat side who want to do this right on immigration, or there's going to be less Democrats in office. All right, we got to take another break. Coming back with Dr. Brett Decker after this break. Ed Martin here on The Movement on The Answer.